German troops are pulling out of Mali after more than a decade serving as part of a United Nations peacekeeping force. Mali's ruling junta demanded an end to the mission despite being in the grip of a jihadist insurgency and other crises.
It's the end of a mission considered among the Bundeswehr's most dangerous. German soldiers are pulling out of Mali after more than a decade. It all started back in 2013. After militant Islamists threatened the capital Bamako, German troops arrived as part of an EU training mission. First to show Malian soldiers how to defend their country against separatists, and then as part of a UN peacekeeping mission called MINUSMA. Over time, more than 24,000 German soldiers were deployed in Mali. The mission repeatedly extended by the Bundestag. At first, there were huge majorities for continuing the mission. Towards the end, however, skepticism grew, both in parliament and among the German public. When Mali's military overthrew the civilian government in 2021, Germany's relations with the junta became increasingly fraught, not least because the new rulers maintained strong ties to Moscow and brought in Russian mercenaries. In June, Mali's government demanded the immediate withdrawal of all UN troops.
Unfortunately, MINUSMA seems to have become part of the problem by fueling tensions in the community, worsened by extremely serious accusations that are very detrimental to peace, reconciliation and national cohesion in Mali. The situation leads to a feeling of mistrust among the population towards MINUSMA, and to a crisis of confidence between the Malian authorities and MINUSMA.
Like other members of the UN mission, Germany decided to pull out.
I very much regret that this mission is now coming to an end in this way, because it has become clear to us in the discussions we find ourselves in a real dilemma. The situation in Mali has not improved, and yet not the mission itself failed, it is the conditions that have caused the mission to fail. This is not the fault of German politics, and certainly not the fault of the Bundeswehr and its soldiers.
Even though its soldiers are now gone, Germany wants to continue providing development aid for Mali. Whether the security situation is stable enough for this aid to make a difference is now in the hands of Mali's government.
Joining me now for more from Abuja is Dr. Kabir Adamu. He's CEO of Beacon Consulting, a company that provides intelligence, expertise and security solutions to businesses in Nigeria and the Sahel. Dr. Adamu, welcome. What impact will the departure of UN troops have on security in Mali?
Thank you very much. The MINUSMA mission was principally aimed at stabilizing the region and to prevent the territorial grabbing that non-state actors had embarked on in Mali. So with their withdrawal, and of course with the withdrawal of other components, including French, German, and several other United Nations components, there is going to be a gap. Now, whether that gap can be filled by the Russian Wagner group or the Malian forces, as it were, unfortunately, only time will tell.
Mali's foreign minister had said that MINUSMA had fueled tension in his country and that the public didn't trust the force. Was he right?
Well, yes, there was an element of mistrust, and mainly because of the association of the UN force, as it were, with forces like France. And so there was a failure to distinguish between the UN role and the role of bilateral forces like the one of France. So that element of mistrust, unfortunately, remained throughout the 10-year deployment of MINUSMA in Mali.
You mentioned this earlier, and so did our report, that Mali's military government has opened its door to Russian mercenaries. What is their role in the country?
So it appears, even though the details of the agreement between the Malian government and the Russian government, as it were, and of course the non-state actor Wagner, is not very clear. What we have seen on ground is operational support, including offensive operational support. So just recently in central Mali, there was an operation using drones, and we know that it was a combination of Malian forces and Wagner forces that carried out that air operation. There are also elements of ground operation involving Wagner forces. So it's military, it's tactical, and to an extent also training support to improve the capacity of the Malian forces.
Are you able to speak to how big Moscow's influence overall on Mali is, and how do you assess its impact?
Now, after the coup, the rapprochement between the Malian and Russian government has increased. And it appears that it is that rapprochement that has strengthened the Malian junta's stance regarding this decision to ask MINUSMA to pull out, and of course by implication to ask other bilateral agreements, including with the French and to countries like Germany. So it is rather increasing the influence. The more these countries and the UN force pull out, the more Russia is able to exercise influence. Now, that would be determined in the future by at least two major things. Successes that this new rapprochement is able to achieve in the area of the economy, and then, of course, in an improvement of the security circumstances in Mali.
Does Russia have altruistic motivations in Mali?
It doesn't appear so. Russia's interest has never been altruistic. It is strategic. It is also, to an extent, economic. Now, Russia is looking for allies. It's been isolated as a result of its actions in Ukraine, and it's finding those allies in Africa. Now, African countries are in need of economic support and sometimes military support.
Please go on.
Yeah, so sometimes Russia offers these two support, both economic and military, and of course, with the hope of getting that strategic support, especially in multilateral bodies such as the UN. But more importantly, is access to the minerals that are in these countries.
Right, we'll leave it there for the time being, but thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Kabir Adamo.
Thank you for having me.